Hi, my name is Graham Wilson and I'm from the University of Glasgow. Rotational and translational gain offer users access to expanded VR environments by amplifying their physical movement to produce larger virtual movements. But gain research has been done under conditions of active motion, where the user is moving their own body. Many XR scenarios have the user under passive motion where their body is moved for them, such as by motion simulators, immersive media and roller coasters, and vehicular XR applications. Passive motion scenarios would greatly benefit from perceptual manipulation for a number of reasons, such as expanding the subjective range of motion in simulators and roller coasters, and decoupling vehicular XR routes from the road or rail infrastructure to make a virtual journey feel very different from the real one. But it's not known what levels of passive rotational gain are imperceivable and comfortably high. How do key factors affect perception and comfort of gain, such as the speed and angle, the presence of a task, and congruent versus opposed motion? And how is gain perceived across different passive scenarios, such as a rotating chair and a moving car? So we conducted 3 studies. First, 2 lab studies in a rotating chair. Study 1 looked at the effects of speed and angle on the perception of gain. Study 2 looked at the effects of task, congruence, and rotation angle. And we applied what we learned to a 3rd study in a moving car, where the participant experienced 3 different mappings of virtual to physical motion, including different rotational and translational gain. For full details on how we measured gain thresholds, please see the paper. But in summary, we measured 2 different threshold levels of gain. The barely perceivable threshold, or BPT, which indicates the largest manipulation without the user noticing. And the maximum comfortable threshold, or MCT, which indicates the upper bound of the manipulation range. The BPT was captured via a 5-trial method of adjustments, where the participant adjusts the gain themselves towards the barely perceivable level. And the MCT was captured via a 3-trial staircase approach, where the gain level is automatically adjusted up or down based on the reported comfort of that trial. And studies were composed of multiple 8-trial sections, the 5-trial BPT, followed immediately by the 3-trial MCT. Study 1 and 2 shared multiple design elements. They both used the Yaw VR Yaw 2 rotating chair, which rotated only on the yaw axis, and the Pico 4 VR headset, which is broadly equivalent to the Meta Quest 3. They played a spaceship shooting game where they were sat in a laser turret and fired at enemies to earn points. After engaging in the game for a few seconds, the chair would rotate, and then participants would answer questions before the game restarted. And we were given a cash prize for the person with the most points to incentivize engagement with the game. We first measured motion sickness using the misery scale from 0 to 10. Participants also rated their perception of their physical turn in terms of both direction and extent. During the method of adjustments, they adjusted the gain towards the imperceivable level, both up or down. And during the staircase, they rated the comfort of the trial from 0 to 10, where 6 or above indicated comfort. For study 1, speed and angle are key aspects of motion, and they also affect perceptual thresholds under active motion. So we looked at 3 different speeds, 10, 20, and 40 degrees a second, and 3 angles, 15, 45, and 90 degrees. The study was split into 3 parts by speed, within which the order of the angles was randomized, with 1 8-trial section per angle. Turn direction was randomized, as previous research suggests it doesn't affect perception. We found that the barely perceivable gain level was 4.6 times the physical motion, which is much larger than the 1.2 to 1.4 times found in active motion. And we found maximum comfortable gain was 17 times, which is much higher than the 3.5 times found in active motion research. Both speed and angle significantly affected thresholds. The fastest speed and largest angle decreased thresholds, and so gain was easier to detect. Participants vastly overestimated the amount of their physical rotation by as much as 145%. The fast speed and small angles significantly increased MISC. However, the motion sickness overall was low at only 0.2 out of 10. For study 2, we looked at task, as thresholds are smaller when there is no task under active motion, because people are more sensitive to the manipulation, although different tasks affect thresholds differently. And so it's unknown how perception of passive rotational gain is affected. We also looked at congruence. Opposing virtual and physical motion could feel bad, such as physically turning left, but showing virtual motion to the right. However, it provides a number of benefits, including entirely decoupling physical and virtual motion during in-car VR games, VR roller coasters, and driving simulators. So we looked at the effects of task, both the same shooting game as Study 1, as well as no task in the same environment. Motion congruence, both congruent and opposed virtual motions, and angle, both 45 and 90 degrees. The study was split into two by task, and within each task, each combination of congruence and angle was randomized. Turn direction was again randomized, and the speed was kept constant at 20 degrees a second. We found a similar barely perceivable gain as Study 1 at 4.3 times, and a slightly smaller maximum comfortable gain of 14 times. Having a task did not affect the barely perceivable threshold, but it did make the maximum comfortable threshold significantly bigger. In other words, participants were less aware of large gains while playing the game. However, having no task made physical turn judgments significantly worse. Participants were more convinced or manipulated by the now visible motion. Opposed motion significantly reduced both thresholds, and so users were more sensitive to the manipulation. However, opposed motion was surprisingly hard to detect. Opposed turn direction was correctly identified only 37% under no task, and only 9% were correctly identified when engaged in the shooting task. So when playing the shooting game, opposed motion was very hard to detect. And so in Study 3, participants sat in the back seat of a car as it drove a 2-mile route around Glasgow, a route involving about 19 turns, both left and right. And they played a variation of the same spaceship shooting game, this time in a moving spaceship through space, and where the ship motion was based on the car motion via the passenger motion platform. They experienced 3 different motion conditions: a 1-to-1 matched motion condition, where the motion of the spaceship was exactly the same as the car, a rotational gain condition, where we applied 3 times rotational gain to all corners, but no difference to the speed of the car, and 3 times rotational gain should be imperceivable based on Study 1 and 2. And finally, a rotational and translational gain condition, where we apply between 3 and 10 times rotational gain, depending on the section of the route, and a 7.5 times translational gain to all forward motion. For both rotational gain and translational gain conditions, we used 2 opposed motion corners, where the car would turn to the left, but the virtual car would turn to the right. Participants were asked to press a button when they detected a mismatch between the virtual and physical motion, and the location of this mismatch was noted. And they were engaged in an interview afterwards about their experience. Overall, we found a low level of perceived mismatch across conditions, despite the prevalence of manipulation, with matched motion having the lowest average number of mismatches and rotational gain having the highest. 3 times rotational gain, which should have been imperceivable based on the results of Study 1 and 2, was perceivable in the car when turning at a low forward speed, but not when turning at a faster forward speed. And when forward speed is amplified to translational gain, even 10 times rotational gain was not noticed, which is much higher than the barely perceivable threshold in Study 1 and 2. None of the opposed turns were noticed, and there's very low levels of misc across all conditions, despite the levels and pervasiveness of amplification, which suggests that virtual routes can effectively be unbounded from reality to produce new experiences. And so we produced a number of key guidelines, such as passive motion platforms can imperceptibly amplify rotation by 4 times. Amplifications of up to 17 times are obvious, but still comfortable, though there are individual differences. When engaged in a task, users are less sensitive to manipulation. Opposed motion is rarely noticeable, especially during a task and even in a moving car. When in a vehicle, faster vehicle speed may be needed to mask rotational gain. An amplified forward motion masks even higher rotational gain.